Hey, what's up you guys? You're watching Team APS, and in today's video, we're wondering what happened to trap hole cards. Bottomless trap hole, void trap hole nightmare, time space, and floodgate trap hole. Let's talk about it. So, as you guys know, the trap hole cards have always kind of been considered staples in Yu-Gi-Oh! And only recently have they really fallen out of favor, along with traps in general. That's kind of part of a bigger conversation. But let's talk about what each trap hole does, kind of what it's good for. And then I have like 3 reasons that I feel trap hole cards have not been as successful lately. So, of course, you've got bottomless trap hole. When your opponent summons a monster that has 1500 or more attack, you get to destroy that monster, and you also get to banish it. So this is a really powerful effect, and this card is actually so powerful that it's limited to 1, at least in the TCG. And I completely, agree, I guess, with that decision. I mean, like, this can hit all the monsters that get summoned from a pendulum summon. If your opponent summons multiple monsters in any way, it hits them all, and it banishes them all. And the thing is, in the OCG, this card actually, to my knowledge, isn't actually limited, but yeah, this is powerful, and it's always been a staple in Yu-Gi-Oh! Whenever you could play 2, people played 2, and you could play 3, people played 3. Next is Void Trap Hole. When your opponent special summons a monster or monsters with 2000 or more attack, you can negate one of those monsters' effects, and if you do, you destroy it. So it's actually a pretty powerful card. People were using this back in hat format. In fact, all of these cards, except for these last 2, were used to varying degrees in hat format with trap tricks, because trap tricks can search them, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. But yeah, this is a similarly powerful card. When your opponent summons a big monster, you get to negate its effects, and that's really strong whenever people would make like a big Xyz monster, a big Synchro. You negate any effects it might have on the field, and then you get to destroy it as well, so that's really good. It doesn't banish like Bottomless. Next, there's Trap Trick Trap Hole Nightmare, which is honestly one of the really popular ones. I think ended up kind of being even more popular than this. And because it was a 3, it was even better. Whenever your opponent's special summoned monster activates its effect, you get to negate that effect and then destroy that card. The only downside, of course, is that it has to be a monster that was special summoned this turn. So if they were to, say, summon Gear Gigant X and activate its effect to search a card, you could use Trap Trick Trap Hole Nightmare. But if they were to wait a turn and then activate its effect next turn, your Trap Trick Trap Hole Nightmare is no longer useful. Then we've got the 2 newer trap holes. There's Time Space Trap Hole, which basically when your opponent special summons a monster from their hand or the extra deck, actually monster or monsters, so let me leave that part out, you can shuffle all those monsters back into the deck, and then you lose 1,000 life points for each monster. So this was actually a really huge thing. This came out in Duelist Alliance, and it was a really, for a while, a strong counter to the idea of pendulum summoning. If your opponent was to pendulum summon like 3 or 4 monsters or 5 at a time, you could use Time Space Trap Hole, shuffle everything back. The monsters didn't get destroyed, so it didn't proc any, like, anti-destruction effects or floating in the grave. They all just got shuffled back into the deck, and that was huge. That alone made this card really powerful. You did lose life points doing it, but the thing is, it's a lot of life points, but it's usually worth it if you get rid of that many cards in kind of one fell swoop. And then the last card is a pretty recent one, Floodgate Trap Hole. And it's when your opponent summons a monster, you change that monster to face down defense position, and then it can never change its battle position. So it's very similar to Quaking Mirror Force. So these are all good cards. Why then are they not really relevant today? And I have 3 reasons that I've come up with, and I, at the end of the video, want you guys to sort of share your opinions on why trap holes aren't as good as they were. So the first thing, this is more of a general thing, it doesn't apply to each one, but they only hit 1 monster. Now, like I said, that doesn't apply to this. And technically they can all hit multiple monsters more or less, but I think that the key weakness to take away from that is that, like, if your opponent summons one thing, usually they're going to be summoning monsters 1 at a time, usually, right? And you're going to bottomless it, or you're going to trap hole nightmare it, or floodgate it, or whatever. The problem with that, though, is that they don't deal with multiple threats. And in this era, I think that Yu-Gi-Oh's come to where, so many monsters can get summoned in one turn, it's not necessarily worth it to just trade a 1-for-1 with a monster when there are things that can, say Torrential Tribute can deal with an entire field of monsters, or, you've got the Solemn cards, which while they only deal with 1 threat, they're spell speed 3 while these are spell speed 2. So in a lot of situations, a Solemn Warning or a Solemn Strike would just be better than these cards. And then in addition to that, there are even hand traps. Things like Ghost Ogre actually sort of contest the viability of a lot of these trap cards, because a Ghost Ogre would do about the same job as a Trap Hole Nightmare or Void Trap Hole in certain situations, and it's in your hand, so it can't get MST'd, and so that's a really big deal. The second thing is they're traps. They're slow. And that's a real problem because it means that you have to set these cards first. That's another thing that hand traps kind of have over them, is that hand traps can just stay in your hand. You can use them more or less whenever you want. And these cards have to be set, which makes them susceptible to MST. And, you know, that's obviously not something that you want to deal with. Now, the same could be said of Solemn cards, but if that's the case, when we're comparing Solemn cards to this, wouldn't you rather, if they're both susceptible to MST or Twin Twisters, wouldn't you rather have the one that's at least spell speed 3 in the sense that, like, there's, if all other things are equal, then it's a better card, if that kind of makes sense. And then the last thing is, these don't answer established boards. And in this game right now, in the current sort of climate of lots and lots of difficult to deal with monsters existing at once on the board, this isn't a good thing. If you top deck one of these against a board of powerful monsters, it does you no good. And that, again, is why hand traps and, you know, stuff like that have been so much more useful right now. Kaijus, too. I should mention kaijus are kind of one of those things that have, in a way, challenged the usefulness of trap holes. Because if you've got to deal with, you know, a Cyber Dragon Infinity, a Totally Awesome, a Crystal Wing, a Lagia and Dolka, you know, a Masterpiece, it's genuinely just better to have a kaiju, or, you know, if you're dealing with a field of multiple monsters, a Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, a Dark Hole, or a Raigeki. Things like that that can deal with more monsters. And that's really unfortunate, but yeah, basically the 3 reasons are they kind of only answer one thing at a time, they're slow, and they don't answer established boards. But there is one monster that we have not talked about yet, you might have noticed, and that's Traptrix Rafflesia. So when this card came out, it was actually a really, really big deal. The idea of being able to set this thing, or we'll summon this thing, in defense, and just use trap hole cards from your deck, like, that's scary, that's crazy. A lot of people thought this card was honestly even broken at the time. You know, you can, it's a generic rank 4, you can sit on it. It itself is not actually affected by trap holes, so, you know, it couldn't be like Fiendish Chained or Breakthrough Skilled when those were popular. Maybe we should talk about those in another video. And you just sat it there, 2500 defense, and whenever your opponent summons a monster, you can detach a card from her and then use any of your trap holes from the deck. And that's crazy good. But even she has some issues. And she did see play for a long, long time. She saw play in Pepe, she saw play in Heroes, she saw play, of course, in Traptrix themselves, and she kind of became a part of the rank 4 toolbox. And I did a video actually in the rank 4 toolbox if you want to check it out. But yeah, so the thing about her, she has a few weaknesses too. The first being that she's kind of a purely defensive card. So she herself can't, like, she can't put on pressure herself. She alone only has 300 attack points, so you're going to be summoning her in defense. She doesn't put pressure on your opponent in the sense of like having high attack and being able to OTK them or anything. She just kind of sits. And the second thing is she has to wait. She doesn't actually get to negate cards, negate activations, negate summons. She just gets to, when something's already happened, respond to it with a trap hole. And as we know, in this sort of era of like the way true Dracos work with like Masterpiece, and the way that you know, Masterpiece is usually going to be immune to monster effects and trap effects, and, you know, things like just the way the true kings work when they're summoned, it really hurts to not be able to counter them kind of on activation or really quickly. And so she can't really do that. She has to sit, she has to wait, and then she has to, you know, use a trap hole card from your deck. And then the last thing, and this is the real conundrum where it all comes full circle, if you run her, it means you have to dedicate space in your main deck for these trap holes. And that in and of itself kind of is the whole problem, where it's like these trap hole cards just don't seem like they're worth running anymore. And so, like I said, I think that the trap holes are good. I just think that it's a shame that they've kind of been crept out. Some of the things, just to recap, that have crept them out: hand traps, of course, kaijus, it's really unfortunate, and the solemn cards. The solemn cards actually have another advantage I forgot to mention, and that's that they're searchable by things like Guiding Ariadne. Now, that's not a popular thing anymore, but that's kind of what led to the decline of these traps, I think, was when the Guiding Ariadne combos came out, and they could, like, search your solemn cards faster than you could actually search trap hole cards. Yeah, and so that's just some of the things. So I thought this would be an interesting discussion. I want to know what you guys think. What happened to trap holes? Why are they not relevant? And maybe in the bigger scheme of things, why are traps in general less relevant? Why have we kind of just regressed to strictly running like Dimensional Barrier at 3 and that's about it? Or maybe just some solemns. I never thought I'd see a day when Bottomless Trap Hole was like willingly ignored by players, but you know, that's where we are right now. So yeah, anyways, that's the discussion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. This was part of our Team APS Summer of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where we're uploading a video every day, so subscribe so you don't miss tomorrow's video, and check out yesterday's. It's a video of Trell's Zephyra Infernity deck. So yeah, anyway, that's all for today. Let me know what you guys think. Can trap holes make a return? What's wrong with them? Or are they just kind of an aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh! That's gone? And also, if you guys want me to talk about maybe the Mirror Force cards, I think are a relevant one, and then Fiendish Chain and Breakthrough Skill, things like that, why have they sort of gone to the wayside in favor of maybe Forbidden Chalice? I think it's all lots of cool discussions. So yeah, that's all for today's video. Hope you guys liked it. Give it a thumbs up if you did. And that's going to be it. So I'll talk to you guys in the next one.